Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to the first ever episode of Teamfight Talkshow, a show all about Teamfight Tactics, a game that is potentially the only game in the world that I'm half decent at. I've been wanting to do a show like this for quite some time, so I'm so happy that Giant Slayer has approached us and allowed us to do this, and I could not ask for a better co-host. He's significantly better than Mark Zimmerman, who's a co-host I have on another shows. Frodan is here. How's it going, Frodan?
I'm good. I am here. I'm really excited to talk about Teamfight Tactics. I got a chance to play one game today. I've been really busy. But I'm really excited because, Travis, we've always been kind of like in a different power dynamic. You've always been the interviewer, and I've always been the interviewee. But it's fun that we can actually work on this project together.
Exactly. And I feel like we're bridging the worlds of, I definitely do more of the League of Legends Riot stuff. You definitely have done more like the Riot the Blizzard strategic game stuff, and now we get to partner on something, so it's really cool. But I don't want to ignore our almost late disguised Toast guest for the premiere episode. How's it going, Toast?
It is going great. Yeah. I was supposed to be here like 30 minutes before, but I fell asleep. But thankfully, the TFT gods decided to set off the fire alarm at my apartment and woke me up a little earlier.
Yeah, it is so great to be working with pro players and streamers again. I forgot how fantastic all of you are at being on time and just fantastic to work with. There's nothing I enjoy more. So for those who want to know what this show is going to be about, obviously Teamfight Tactics, but I think we're looking to mix a lot of different stuff here where we talk to different folks. We have maybe a guest on every week. We'll see how things evolve over the show and how it goes, but hopefully have a guest on every week. Talk about the meta, talk about the game, talk about what's going on. Obviously, there's a ton of things to talk about. It's actually the perfect time to be starting the show. And then as TFT Esports, hopefully rises up from the primordial ooze that it's in right now, we also have a chance to talk about the latest things. And quite frankly, we get to talk about, all those things on this episode, the premiere episode of Teamfight Talkshow. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it as we talk to Toast, then talk about Teamfight Tactics Galaxies, which just hit mobile, which I've had a chance to play and is actually available right now, I believe, and it's like a soft launch or whatever. And then TFT Esports, speaking specifically to the Invitational, maybe a little bit more. So first off, Frodan, you've known Toast for a while. Do you want to go ahead and maybe lead the charge on some of these first questions?
Absolutely. So today, our featured guest, we figured we start off with the best, right? Why settle? So we have Mr. Jeremy Wong, aka Disguised Toast. He is a legend amongst many streamers, particularly amongst strategy gamers. If you are following Hearthstone, or you follow TFT, Legends of Runeterra, or potentially you're following the Valorant hype and rumors, look no further than the man to my right.
Is that true, Toast? You're going to be a premier Valorant streamer?
Yeah, I'm gonna grind it out. I'm gonna surprise everyone with just how amazing my FPS skills can be.
Can't wait to see a card game guy go to first-person shooters. It's going to be sick.
It already did happen. Hyped became an Overwatch pro very briefly before Owl actually got set up. But generally speaking, we're not necessarily known for our mechanics. We're usually known for our big brain plays. And Toast is one of the best at them. So Toast, I'm going to start things off here. For people who may not be familiar with you, can you just introduce yourself in a couple of sentences here?
All right, sounds good. I mean, to be fair, it's a TFT show. I think everyone is aware of who I am. But just in case someone got into TFT, within the last couple of days, I'm Disguised Toast. I'm a TFT streamer. I was Challenger set 1, but kind of just chilled for a bit. And now set 3's coming out, so I might hit Challenger again if I have to spare time, just kind of get that title. So I do a lot of clickbaits. I appeal to the common denominator, and yeah, that's my TFT spiel. And then
you're the McDonald's of streamers.
Yeah, the McDonald's of streaming.
Gotcha.
Yes. McDonald's is best way.
I always invest in Disguised Toast thumbnail stonks. That's the number one investment for my portfolio.
That's true.
Toast, talk to us a little bit about what drew you into TFT. Like, what makes you like the game? And how did you continue to explore that part of why'd you choose specifically TFT to dive more in?
So there's this game called Hearthstone, which is a great strategy game that a lot of strategy gamers play. But at the time, it was essentially the same game for 4 years, and the strategy gamers were hungry for something different, and we latched onto Dota autochess for a little bit, which is like a mod in Dota 2, and it was great. But that kind of stalled out. So when Riot came in with their own version of it, it's a great opportunity because I also live with League of Legends streamers. So there's this strategy game made by League of Legends. So the hype was there. Tried it out, was a lot of fun. Kind of scratched that itch of a strategy game that's not Hearthstone. And that's kind of what got me sucked in. It was the item system specifically that made me like it more than other versions of the same game. Because in TFT, the items are almost half the game, where the best items on the best unit could really make something crazy. So yeah, when TFT came out during beta, and I was one of the few people with advanced access, so I got to skip the line. And my stream was popping off.
Streamer privilege. I remember that. Privilege. I had to wait 9 hours to get into PvE last July.
The rich gets richer. So I was using that streamer privilege, streaming 10 hours a day, and the viewership was skyrocketing, helped me hit 1 million followers on Twitch. So
it was really the money, is what I'm hearing. That's really what drew you to TFT.
Yes.
The fame.
Okay.
And with it came money. Money just happened to be there.
Oh, yeah. Great. And so since then, you've competed in TFT, you've created content for it. You casted TFT. So, I guess just like a quick rapid fire stuff. Like, what's your favorite comp in TFT history so far in the past few sets?
Favorite comp? I gotta say it's Gunslingers. Like, it started off kind of bad, but got buffed to a point where it's cool because Gunslinger is normally a comp that only one person goes. Like, if two players go Gunslingers, neither of you are winning.
Oh, yeah.
But if you're the only player going Gunslinger, you have all your Gunslingers are gonna be 3-star. And Gunslinger Blade Master, you just see one of your units, either Lucian popping off, it's like Tristana popping off, or your Gangplank with its barrels just blowing everything up. Like, everything about it is like, you can have a carry on each of your Gunslinger. Like, even Graves back then, if you double RFC him, put a red buff, and he would like turn into a lawnmower and just hit the entire map with his auto attack. So it was cool to have golden units, each capable of carrying. So yeah, that's my favorite TFT team.
I'm kind of curious on that. What you mentioned that you really played it a ton in set 1. You kind of dropped off in set 2, but now you're looking at set 3. Why was it that you kind of dropped off in set 2?
Oh man, set 2 was really boring with the individual champion units. And this is one of the things I made sure they knew when we had the All-Star, because it's like, you have Syndra, who damages in a circle, and you have Thresh, who shields in a circle, and then you have Skarner, who shields himself, and then you have like Vladimir, who just damages and heals. Like, the two main carry for physical damage. In set 1, you had Draven, who ramps up, axes are flying, he's healing, he's one-shotting, like, it's a spectacle. In set 2, who's your damage carry? You have Ashe, and what does Ashe do when she gets going? She just shoots a little faster. So instead of like shooting at 1 per second, she might shoot like 1.5 arrow per second. Like, that shit's boring. Same with Twitch. It's like, okay, he's ramping up. What's changed? Well, now he shoots a little harder than he was shooting before he ulted. And like, when you look at all the abilities, it's just boring, frustrating. Especially Talia. Like, I'm going to randomly target someone and stun them at the beginning. And it could be your carry, or it could be your tank. Who knows? Here you're like, there was a lot of like boring abilities, and the ones that are boring are also like kind of random. So a little frustrating at times. Singe was kind of a mix of both of them, because like, it's cool to have someone who breaks the rules, but the amount of frustration people felt, like their entire team, like 6 Blade Master chasing that Singe around doing nothing. Like, one person is just laughing his ass off, and the other person just feels like they got screwed out of a proper fight. So I think there was a lot of problem with individual units in set 2.
Gotcha.
Got it. So some more like the abilities they chose, not necessarily the champions. It just felt like, and I agree. I think like for myself, set 2 lacked a lot of the flair. Like, part of what made, I guess, set 1 really fun was because it fulfills the fantasy of essentially what it is, right? Team fights. And you get to see like all their really iconic abilities go off, even if it's not necessarily like iconic to what they do. And I think set 2 kind of went for more of like, well, yeah, like you said, like they attack a little faster, or they run a little quicker. And it wasn't really obvious. Like, some of these like most important units during like metas, where like Yorick was really good, is that he throws his arm in the air, and I don't even know if he ultimates, gets his ability off, but yet he's like super core to a lot of compositions that involve light or summoners, or any variation thereof. So I always love your sentiment.
I missed the like Gnar style unit in set 2, where I just felt like Gnar's ult felt this like huge dramatic moment in set 1. Like, it just, you could see it building, and it just, that stun hit, and it felt huge. And I just always felt like everyone was just doing damage to everybody at all points in time. So that's what I'm kind of excited about set 3 so far. It feels like I'm still learning all the units and everything, but it feels as though there's a lot more hype around some of these moments.
Yeah, and I think one thing that for myself that I think is really important to understand is that TFT at its core is a free game. They don't really monetize it super well. They're gonna release a pass called the Galaxies Plus Pass, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But for myself, like, I always felt that TFT is supposed to ultimately make you want to play League of Legends for Summer's Rift. And I got a lot of that for set 1, because you see all these powerful carries, you see all these really big game impacting abilities. And it's like, wow, I want to be able to like replicate that a little bit in my own control. in Rise of the Elements, I didn't really get that itch, right? Because a lot of like even the most powerful units didn't really make it very obvious in terms of like how they would carry. Contrast that with Galaxies. Now, when you see like Echo Ultimate, I'm like, oh, that's sick. I kind of want to play something. And things like that. So ultimately, I think it's in Riot's best interest to make it flashy because in the end, they're trying to sell a product. That's why we play their games, and the best way to do that is advertise their champions and why they're cool, as opposed to like, look how balanced this is, because that's kind of what Rise of Elements Redemption is that I felt like it was super well balanced for like a competitive player, in terms of just like giving them a lot of options.
Yeah. I'd want to make sure that we move on to the next topic, but my last question for you, Toast, is just, during set one, when people might have been watching you stream a lot of TFT, you were over on Twitch. How's life over on Facebook? And maybe this is an opportunity for you to talk about maybe some of the streams that you're going to be doing over there around TFT.
The streams I'll be doing it's like the same ones as I've been doing on Twitch, like playing the new TFT set, and then like when I want to chill, Apex with friends. So nothing's really changed in regards to content. But
Gotcha.
life's been good here. It's like more relaxing. Obviously, a smaller crowd, but it's also nice not constantly compete for viewership. Like that itself is like something you chase, right? It's like I want to compete and like stream for 12 hours. I'm gonna wake up at 8 a.m. because that's when this streamer gets on. So I'm gonna get on so I can take his viewers and stream for like hours and hours just so that I'm gonna be the top streamer. And like that's fun, but sometimes you just, you know what? I just want to play games I want to play and stream when I want to stream and play with whoever I want, which is what Facebook offers me. So it's been a lot better for my mental health.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, it's always good when you have good mental.
Scouted, saw that it was contested, and decided to pivot to Facebook. Where kind of play whatever comps and hang out, and just some people just want to queue up normals. They don't want to play ranked anymore, Travis.
Yeah, that's what makes Toast such a good TFT player. So you can keep an eye on the competition and see where the opportunities are. But either way, let's actually move into to TFT conversation right now. Officially with our TFT Galaxies deep dive. There's so much stuff to talk about. There's all the new Galaxy stuff is hit. The new features and mechanics of Galaxies, the Galaxy Pass, et cetera, et cetera. So first off, I want to get a vibe from both of you. Maybe we'll start with you, Frodan, since we were just grilling Toast.
Sure.
What is your take on Galaxies so far? What are the things that you're liking? What are the things you're concerned about?
So the number one thing I like most about Galaxies is something that we've already mentioned, which is that the set feels a lot flashier and more fun to play, like in the sense that the payoff is much higher. I didn't realize that I missed Pirates, but playing Space Pirates is like hilariously awesome. Even though I don't think it's very good to go for Space Pirates, I just think like, the element of do I like risk it to get gold or like try to find this like early chase is really fun. I also think that they took a lot of good lessons from the second set of Rise of the Elements. In that in set 2, part of what they did was they started creating more horizontal builds and less vertical ones. Verticals being like, do I go 6 gunslingers or do I go 6 blade masters? Do I go 6 sorcerers? And a little bit, they did less of that and more like, do I put in 2 of this, like 2 mystics, or do I splash in some wardens here, etc. for frontline, or cloud for element stuff. So I like Galaxies because it's kind of a fusion of the first and second set of ideologies, and I think that overall it's very balanced for release. The things I'm concerned the most is visual clarity. I think that the first thing was the splash art versus the model art controversy took me aback pretty significantly. I thought that it was like a good idea, but the execution of it seemed a little sloppy, and it also made the game feel a lot like less impressive and less immersive. Surprisingly, I didn't realize how much I cared about splash art until it just like appeared into the shop, and it looked like these weird scuffed budget figurines you would see at the dollar store of like, oh, this is like a knockoff version of your favorite League of Legends champion. And I'm glad that they chose to listen to the community during PvE, because that was definitely like a point of concern. But in terms of moving forward, I think that a lot of the set does kind of look repetitive. There's a lot of blue, purple, pink mix of it. So sometimes it's difficult, even still, to tell on Carousel like which champions are which at first glance.
Yeah, the only thing I enjoyed about the models versus Splash was that when I went, so Frodan, you were talking a little bit about how in set one, it felt like, really relatable to League of Legends. And so for me, somebody who's very, very familiar with League, it was so easy when I was like, okay, I need to find a Gnar to just be rolling down and immediately recognize what the Gnar looks like. I remember in set two, it's like I'd be looking for Syndra. I would not expect it to be this like blue oceany looking splash art.
Right.
And there was kind of like a disconnect between like the model and the splash art. And that's kind of what I think they were looking to solve there. Now, obviously, it doesn't present as well, like that Jin image that we have up on the screen right now, thanks to our producer. That is pretty like, what is even going on there? But I kind of hope that in the future they figure out a better, it was a great meme, by the way, a better situation, because I do feel as though it can be kind of confusing at times when you're like, okay, I need Yasuo, and you have an idea of what Yasuo looks like, but if you're not used to like that one random splash art, obviously these things get solved within a couple of days of playing the game a lot, but I can kind of understand at least where the sentiment was.
One thing that I think is also important is that when you're playing game, I think like one of the biggest lessons learned was that set 1 to set 2 was too big of a change. I think like people look at hyper engaged players and they look at like, oh, like the game feels the same, right? Like in set 1, when they were adding things like Kai'Sa and Pantheon and like all these really cool champions, it still ultimately just felt like the same, but you just play like a different carry, or you rush to a different legendary instead of playing like the traditional 5-star units or 5-cost units. And so I think Riot was like, well, what if we just like redid like 90% of the set and you like don't know the game anymore? And I think that turned off a lot of players. So for set 3 for Galaxies, I really like that they brought back a lot of familiarity, right? Like people like, oh, they just like reuse Cho'Gath in set 1. I think that's important. So that way people have understanding of like a core understanding of what to expect for at least like a good portion of the set, so that they have a compass of like, well, I understand this was really good. Like I understand what Yasuo does, even though it kind of has that same ability from Rise of the Elements. So I appreciate that they eased us in, and I think that's probably why Galaxies has a better first impression than Rise of the Elements.
Yeah. Toast, what's been your impression so far of Galaxies?
Definitely enjoy all the flashy ults coming back and Sorcerer coming back. So it's great because I think Sorcerer was the one comp that could turn any extra unit into something like a carry. They also made everything scales with AP. So if you had like, there was a moment before it got fixed or nerfed, Thresh scaled off AP. So you go 6 Sorcerer Thresh. And what he did was his AP scaling was the amount of mana he would give the unit he pulls in and himself. So if you had 6 Sorcerer, he'll pull a unit, give it full mana, give itself full mana. So
that's fun.
He will pull every unit on your bench, like
Oh
one
my
by
God.
one. And as they come in, they all out. So you have 2 Echoes, 2 Cho'Gath, and 2 Misfortune on your bench. So every second, an Echo's ulting, a Cho'Gath is casting his out, or a Misfortune is casting her out. And meanwhile, your Thresh is just throwing his lantern, pulling them in. Obviously got nerfed really fast, but yeah, those moments are the ones we miss where you can do something really stupid and broken. It's that belief where if everything's broken, nothing's broken kind of deal. That's been my favorite thing so far. I do agree about the coloring. I saw a meme Frodan tweeted about like color palettes when it comes to TFT, and it's just like that spectrum of blue to purple, and the only units I feel like have their own distinct coloring are the rebels, which is like a brownish yellow. So it's so easy for me to like identify rebel units. It's like it's the little one that's a little brown, a little orange, and I like the coloring for that. Everything else is just some kind of purple. Dark Star's purple, Star Guardian's like bright purple.
Yep, Void's purple.
Void's purple.
Chrono's is kind of white-ish, like white, silver, gray. So there's that element. But yeah, for the most part, it's really hard to tell.
Well, they've definitely gone further on the boards than they've ever gone before too. Like I bought one of the boards out of the store today and was playing with it, and it's like it is crazy looking how different. What is shocking to me is that you can still have like the neutral board where it's like the grassy, boring thing where it's like standard from set one, and then you go to somebody else's board and it's just like purple and crazy, and you've got all these purple units doing all this crazy stuff, and you're just it's like it's hilarious to see the differences in some of these things. Oh, we found the meme.
I like it. I thought it was fun. I'm glad that Toast saw it and liked it.
Yeah. Either way, I think we're kind of nitpicking a little bit, but I do agree with Toast that really the fun things. I kind of like it when TFT feels broken up until when I don't like it, because it's just hilarious when you're like, okay, I'm just gonna build shapeshifters and everything will live forever because health is insane right now or something. It's hilarious whenever you can just see things blow up and all that. So I'm hoping that we get some of that more interesting stuff and it continues to be a thing as we go through set 3.
That being said, I feel like there's still a pretty good distinct amount of like clarity in terms of like when the abilities are going off. One of my favorite builds is Cybernetics, largely because I'm just like a big Echo fan. I just think he's really cool. And right now, Cybernetics seem to be doing very well. They're considered by lots of the top challenger players who grinded PvE to be one of like the top comps to play. So Cybernetics, someone's mentioning in chat, DXN saying that he likes the chromatic look of it. And yeah, I think Cybernetics is definitely one of the cooler designs of the set from my perspective. And I definitely recommend, like, if people are trying out, like, what are some early builds for you to play? I think that Cybernetics is really good. I like Sorcerers a lot, kind of what Toast is saying. And I've been seeing a lot of, like, Mech Pilot, like, fusions of stuff, Mech Pilot Sorcerer, Mech Pilot Infiltrator, and it also did very well in the Invitation as well, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Well, how about Chrono? Because Chrono seems like one of those ones. I'm curious if it's good at all, or if it's one of those things you have to kind of drop in, because it does feel kind of like the easy build where it's spread out across all the different tiers and you can kind of just build it up over time. I'm curious if either of you guys know much about it.
If you're asking me, Chronos are in a pretty decent spot because they're very easy to splash in. Like, for example, Chrono Blasters is something that is very commonly played, but it almost feels like the blasters the Chrono isn't the most important part. It's just getting blasters with brawlers, and then you can kind of outfit a little bit heavier on the back line or a little bit more on the front line. So I usually call them more like brawlers, blasters as the core comp, and then you splash in some Chronos. There's also like those old Chrono like Jin builds, but I think they've kind of fallen off lately. I don't know. Toast, have you seen any of that at all?
Yeah, Chrono Jin was always like essentially the first bait comp where it does really well up until like top 4, and it just falls off a cliff. Because like early game fights go on for such a long time. It's so cool to see your Jin like start racking up those huge numbers. But late game and higher elo lobbies, it's like your Jin. It's so hard for your Jin to like do his job between like Bramble Vest or Infiltrators or Sorcerer just getting a good hit on it. And the fight's being over within like the first 15 seconds. It's just so hard to win with a Jin. I don't think I've ever seen someone like win with 6 Chrono Jin in like the last 3 weeks.
Like the first 2 days of the beta or
in my low elo lobby right before this, I won in a normal game where I went 6 Rebel. I turned Darius, I think, into a Rebel so that he could get extra damage, and then I got 4 Space Pirates, and the Space Pirates gave me 2 spatulas, so I could add another unit to the board, so I was able to splash in Mystic that way. It was hilarious because I had Asol just like going crazy and Gangplank drop. It was fantastic. That's the stuff that gets me really excited, is this like coming in. This is kind of my favorite part, and I know a lot of people talk about this with strategy games where it's like the beginning and it's kind of unsolved. I know a lot of people have like some crazy builds out there, but people start doing weird shit and it feels like there's so many different things until, a month from now, whenever you just walk in and you're like, okay, there's 3 different options and I'm going to figure out who's going the other 2 so that I can figure out which one I'm going to go,
Yeah, I think that Rebels, they dominated PB for a long time because just they were super easy to get. They kind of felt like Berserkers from Rise of the Elements, where you just kind of like mash them together and just let them do their thing. And then they started refining their build a little bit more after Rebels had gotten nerfed. And said, you know what, we're just going to not go 6 Rebel as much. We're going to probably focus on Yasuo and Master Yi and play like Rebel Blade Master and kind of splash in a little bit more defensive stuff. And right now, they're kind of in an interesting spot where it's like, if no one's going Rebels, you can definitely like carve yourself a top 2 spot if you get that Master Yi and Yasuo to 3 stars. Because that does seem to be a big focus on Galaxies. And I actually like that because Galaxies really pushes you to like find what is your win condition and get it to 3 stars. That almost seems like the key, unless your win conditions like get Misfortune to 2 star or something like that. And overall, that makes it for pretty exciting moments because very commonly you'll see like a top 2 comp have like 3 or 4 gold 3-star units, and it's like such a different change of pace compared to other sets where you have to like hyper roll and stay at really low level to do that. I think
let's talk about the Galaxies pass. We don't have to spend too much time on this, but this is the first time now where you can. Obviously they've had the free versions of it now, but now you can drop some money on it, get a bunch of cool stuff. Have you guys had a chance to look too much at this?
Yeah, I instantly bought it. I didn't even look at it. But the Galaxy Pass gives you all kinds of like fun little cosmetic stuff that you can customize. You can customize the boom, which is like the little flares or lasers or sparkles you shoot at your opponent when you beat them through pure skill and no luck involved. So I like that. I'm a big sucker for cosmetics, so I instantly bought it.
Yeah, no, I think it's super cool. I think if we scroll down on the page, and we've got it up right now, we can see some of the different elements that are available right now, different platforms to battle on. And Toast, what do you think of the Galaxies Pass?
I think it's just a great idea to make some money in exchange for cosmetics. I feel like the first time I've seen this system was Fortnite who did it. And I feel like it's been done before, but that's the time where it really made me realize, oh, this is how a monetization model exists for free-to-play games. And yeah, it's always like, so because like if you don't pay money, you still get a little bit of something, and they kind of like dangle the juicy stuff in front of you. It's like, wow, you got all this XP you earned up over the past season. It's a shame that you don't have access to all these great cosmetics after all your hard work. But if you want to pay for it, you get the UFO sprite, you get the board. Like, I think they've done a great job with cosmetic this time around. Or like the board's super cool, and even the damage, like you can modify, you can customize the damage you shoot out at the other little legend now.
Super cool.
Yeah, the laser beam, and they have all sorts of different stuff. That's one thing, is that with all the cosmetics, it's really felt like Rise of the Elements felt pretty elemental, but man, we are, no pun intended, in another galaxy with these cosmetics. Like, it's crazy. And I think it's pretty cool. The other fun thing, this is the case is with all these battle passes, is the fact that I've now spent money on it is just going to guilt me to make sure that I play frequently enough so that I can get the things that I'm owed based off of the money that I've spent. So I deserve these things.
They already got you, sunk cost fallacy. Yeah, I'm still rocking my winter. What's it called? Winter's Claw Arena. Because it's like a very minuscule edge. For those of you who don't know, if you use the Winter Claw Arena, it gives you like a couple of centimeters on screen to run to the left away from your opponent who shoots their boom at you. So you get that like microsecond to like die just half a beat later than your opponent. And
has it ever helped you go further?
Yeah, I would say that I've gained like 30 LP from
the pay to win.
Totally worth it. Yeah.
Version of Teamfight Tactics.
Pay to win TFT. You heard it here first.
Well, let's also. Oh, go ahead.
I never lose carousels.
You never lose carousels? Let's talk a little bit about these patch notes. Toast, you're probably the best to guide us through. You don't have to guide us through, but are there any interesting things in this final patch that hit that brought Galaxies to live? Anything that really stands out to you?
I could just talk about like general broad changes because like even though there are patch notes with 10.6 for a lot of like casual players, um, it's like including everything
Sure,
that's been going on. The
that's a
biggest
fair
one
point.
is grievous wounds. Went from 80% to 50%. So healing like reduction is half as effective. But they also nerf healing on everything like Warmog, Bloodthirster, Gunblade, just to try and it's like they want less healing, but they also don't want healing reduction to be that good. So they put it on the damage, like they buff the damage on red buff so that it burns more. They removed they removed Titanic Hydra and they made redemption different. So a lot of existing items got changed. That's a big one because people are gonna try and I'm gonna make Hush on my blaster, and it's this weird chalice thing. So pay attention. The biggest change is the drop ratios, the drop rates for each level. So in the past, the highest percentage for one particular tier, so like the highest tier for 2 cost unit was 35 at level 4, 5, and 6. And the highest 35% for 3 cost was level 8. But now it goes up to 40% for a 2 cost unit and 3 cost unit. So now at level 5, you have a 40% chance to roll a 2 cost unit. And that's why, I'm not sure if you guys noticed, but there's so much 3 stars now. Like,
Yeah, I think Frodan was kind of alluding to that. It's like find your 3-star.
in set 1 and set 2, Frodan mentions like you have to wait till you're like at the edge of death before you can roll down because you can't level and you want to like save up your gold. But with the new changes, you can hyper roll at level 5 for 2 costs or level 7 for 3 costs. And that's why you see so much 3-star units because 5% is huge. And a lot of the fights at the end comes down to like your 3 stars. It's either your 3 stars or your 5 costs. So if you're someone who just goes for, I'll just 2-star my comp and they're solid and everyone's a 2-star. It's really hard to win with that now with the new 3-starring system.
Yeah, and I think that's like a nice risk and reward that's kind of baked into the new set because in the past it kind of felt like it wasn't ever worth going for 3 stars. And almost every time I've ever explained this to a newer player trying to level up their game, they always sounded so disappointed. I was like, you should never go for 3 stars. And people are like, why not? That's like the best part of the game. So
Yeah.
I think like for many people, that's like a nice thing for them to understand and gravitate towards. Like if you have your favorite comp, try to find try to identify those carries, and if you can reasonably without sacrificing too much economy and level compared to the rest of the players in the lobby, try to find 3-star units or at least find ways to bridge that gap. And I think like it's a really good thing because before without that it almost became like, well, everyone plays 2 stars, and so you just naturally look for legendaries because they're the best 2-star versions of units. And that just became who can 2-star their 5-cost unit. And it was like, 2-star Singe, 2-star Pantheon, 2-star Kaisa, 2-star Zed, things like that. Ended up deciding lobbies a lot more often. So I think multiple paths to victory is like really important for TFT. And so 3 stars being a lot more viable is a really cool factor, I'd say.
Yeah, no, I completely. I think it's going to be really cool to start to see people kind of branch out because I think it also allows you kind of mix it up where it's not like, well, I'll just 2-star within this guide that I found and then hope that my build beats the other person's build that they've got with a guide going. It's like, well, now there's actually depth. How far do you want to go in? Have you gotten enough or do you need to move on? I think that'll be quite cool. The other thing, Toast, I noticed that the econ kind of went crazy with set 3. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, econ. Now, like, there's so little starting gold. In set 2, it's normal for you to buy every unit for the first 3 rounds. It's just like, you kind of expected that. But with set 3, you start with, I think, just 2 gold per round, and you can only buy half your shop at a given time early on. And they also changed streaking gold. In the past, you have to win like 7 rounds to hit max streaking. Now it's just 4. You win 4 games, and you're hitting max streaking. You're getting 3 gold per win. So it incentivizes everyone to like lose really hard or win really hard. So like you might see someone just toss the entire economy into leveling and re-rolling, and someone who just puts the worst unit on, because they also changed the damage system for the first round. There's 0 base damage, like the first couple of rounds. There's 0 base damage, and for the entire game, each unit is only worth 1 damage, which is a huge change because in the past, a unit could be worth up to 5 damage. And now that means early on, you can afford to take way more losses. But late game, like, you're taking 20 damage per loss. If you lose by 1 unit, if you lose by 5 unit, it doesn't matter. You're taking like 20 to the face. And it's kind of crazy how it is. And like the economy and the damage, I don't know like what's the proper way to play it. I just know you want to win a lot or you want to lose a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's like another cool thing that I like is that they're giving you multiple ways to play the early game. I think in the past, it was very clearly delineated into like 2 things, which was like I either specifically try to win streak and like play the best thing immediately every turn, even sacrificing economy to level really aggressively. And then there's the other, which was I'm just going to lose to try to get a smash off the carousel. And I think that was like the 2 main strategies, especially in this past set. And I think that now you can legitimately still lose throughout the carousel, which all the carousel mechanics have changed in that you can get even full items as early as the second carousel. But the most important thing is that if you choose to go on a losing streak, that's like a completely viable path because early game damage has been nerfed. On the flip side, late game damage is just like so wild to me because I feel like I'm at like safe at 40 health and I lose like 2 fights sometimes and I'm like, oh, I'm dead. So you have to be careful with like when you transition because if you take a little bit too long because you're like trying to busy collect 3-star units or trying to be a little bit extra greedy to get those final rolls, you end up paying a big price. And it's very swingy because the base damage is all that you really care about. Damage is now changed where every single champion left on the board, regardless of their cost and their what level they are, will do 1 damage. But the base damage, like in the late game, is absurd. It's like 15.
Why do you guys think they did that? Do you think? I mean, have they said publicly as to why they made that change?
I don't know. I think I talked to Mort and he said I can't remember the conversation exactly, but it felt like the time per game was still the same. I think it just allows you to lose streak early on without feeling too bad because like the 5 rounds you plan to lose at the beginning, like the most amount of damage you can take is what 3 and then 4. So you give up 22 health if you want to just entirely lose streak the first set of games, and you'll hit maximum lose streak goal too. So I think it's to make it so streaking is more of a viable strategy early on, so you don't get punished that hard.
Yeah, Final DF in chat says it was to avoid a Z situation, and I do remember that. I have definitely done, and I'm sure all of us have done the Z v Z battles where you're just sitting there, getting up to go grab a drink so that you can slowly have these things roll down as it happens. So
it was one of the cooler things about set 2, though, which is when Zed compies himself infinitely and fills up the entire board. That was pretty dope. Yeah, I think that like this change does a few things really well. I think the first is that losing before you get to see all your items really sucks. I think that we can all agree that like an aggro meta where like items, as Toast has mentioned, is like half the game, if not more, because it ends up shaping a lot of times your composition. Largely because you can always spend gold to change the champions, but you can't use your gold to change the items that you have. So for people who are like beginner/intermediate level TFT, a lot of times you see the top players like Toast and sometimes Travis on his best days will be crafting game plans around the items that they get off the carousel and the drops. Now you kind of transpose that with like the fact that it's very common in set 2 for people to die before they even get to wolves at the end of stage 4. And stage 4 is often when you get like the most items because that's kind of like your payoff if you got unlucky with items earlier. So I think having that damage mitigation is important. I think the second thing is to make the late game actually more dramatic and impactful. Like every single loss hurts that much more, and every single victory feels that much sweeter. If you win by a narrow margin, it's like a really big deal because you just survived big HP. So I think in terms of like the spectating and also like the entertainment factor of it, it becomes a much more like tense moment that's kind of held there. And I think that's super important in strategy games because the action isn't controlled directly all the time by the user. And so instead of like big outplays where they juke into bushes or flash over walls or miss flash if you're me on Summer's Rift, then you end up having like these moments where it's not super obvious what was really cool outside of like the big abilities. And I think like narrow victories like that will add more drama.
Yeah. Well, hey, I want to move on to mobile, but before we do, that was me trying to trip up our producer. I do want to just mention there was this update from Riot Mort that came out around the Galaxies mechanic, because obviously one of the big things around Galaxies in set 3 is the idea that you can end up in these kind of like alternate versions of the game where the rules are a little different. Maybe you start with Nico's help, or maybe there's like a bunch of crazy stuff on the first carousel. So they've gone ahead and made the decision to delay it so that into the next patch, so that everybody can get used to the current ones. It says some might bump to 10.8, so we'll see. But I don't know. Were you guys really looking forward to this? Do you think it's a good decision to kind of bump this over? I kind of am okay with it because it feels like there's so much to learn right now that getting into this kind of crazy rando world around what you're going to get, I think it's kind of okay to have that wait for a little bit.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Like, imagine if someone was to get in right now and their first game was the Nicoverse, they'd be so confused. It's like, what's this 2 things that's on my board at the very beginning? Oh, and like they don't really know how to use it correctly, and they go into another game, and it's like, wait, those things are gone, and they go into another game, and suddenly the initial carousel is 4 cost unit, and they just kind of can't get their feet wet with the actual game. So, well, experienced players like myself, it's like, oh yeah, I love the purple carousel because you don't know what's the right one. It's kind of fun to have you carry at the beginning, but totally understandable. I like that they want to push it back because oh man, when Sets of the Element came out and they had their elemental hex.
Yeah,
everyone was so confused. Like, what the fuck is this shit? And the worst thing about it was
you guys took an item slot. Like a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, the item slot thing was definitely confusing.
I would say that this is a very wise decision, largely because of what you said, Travis. Information overload. But overall, I also wanted to take this opportunity to kind of applaud the concept of the Galaxies. Not only is it very thematic and within the lore of the set here, I think that's a really good adaptation and lesson learned from Hearthstone. Believe it or not, Hearthstone Battlegrounds I think is a very good game and very fun. Personally, I prefer TFT over Hearthstone Battlegrounds at the moment, but part of what makes Battlegrounds great is the hero powers that you get to choose to play the game with. And the reason why I think that's really powerful is because it's the same core game, but because of the conditions, the pre-existing conditions change, it shifts the way you think about the game and maybe frames the outlook of how the rest of the game maps out. And it increases its replayability multiple times over. So I think that the Nicoverse is kind of similar to that. Before the game starts, you understand that these are the conditions. How does that change your game plan? Not to mention that all the other random stuff that happens, the carousel, the item drops, etc. So I think it's a really clever way to incorporate it into their game without having to make it so that they have to put 10 new champions to make it feel like a different game. So overall, I think these Galaxies are a really important mechanic moving forward in this set.
Wasn't it Hearthstone where the devs talked about being able to tell really cool stories? I think that was a Ben Brode thing or something. I remember that the idea that you want to have that crazy experience where you got the crazy items combination or you have the spatula or whatever. And I definitely feel as though this type of stuff really lends itself to that, where you're going to end up in a situation that you didn't anticipate, or you you either lucked or strategically played, or probably a little bit of both, your way into this really miraculous thing where you're stomping everybody or you save yourself at the last minute. I think that's going to be cool. When I played on PBE, I don't remember seeing any kind of visual indication to oh, you're now in the Nicoverse or whatever when the game loads up. Do they have that right now? Did they add anything like that?
Right now, all it is an icon in the top left. It's a small icon by the round number. So it's either purple or if it's an icon of Nico. So no, you need to take a second to kind of collect yourself.
Because I was thinking about that, Toast, as you were talking about the idea of, you're just coming back, you log in, and you're seeing all these different weird things happen. I wonder if there isn't some better way to telegraph this to people, like, hey, here's what is happening now, or at least make you realize that this game is a little different than the other games, other than you just look at the carousel and there's this thing.
Yeah. Like right. I think that's also one of the reasons why they want to push it back. It's like just give new players some time so that when the weird thing does happen, like when these galaxies do happen, they're able to like at least recognize like what's different. Like the purple carousel, it's simple enough. It's like you load in and everyone's a forecast unit. You can kind of get it right away. But yeah, the Nico one is not as clear right away of what it does.
Well, let's move on to our next topic, which is TFT Mobile, which I've had on this phone for the last couple of days, and I've really been enjoying it. It's an interesting thing. Have you guys had a chance to play it yet?
On mobile, my girlfriend Taylor has downloaded it. I don't think I have access. Is it out for iOS?
There's a link. If you actually click the link, you can go directly. If you search it up, it's not like there yet, but I think they're doing a soft launch.
Right, trying to fish for my password.
I think it might be available right now or this evening. It's not supposed to be out until tomorrow, but it definitely feels like they intentionally early released it or something happened. But I have it right now, and I was able to log into not the playtest account, but the actual one that they gave me a playtest account to play with a little bit and review it.
Yeah, Android is working. Jules says in chat, I've seen other people with Android phones, but yeah, I guess you need the link for iOS.
And once again, we're aware that Android is the superior phone system. Glad we could have that demonstrated.
So, do you have an Android?
I have an iOS.
Yeah,
even Riot agrees.
Too.
That's why we got the first guest.
That joke is going to make I see Twitch chat being more active right now around the Android versus iOS thing than they've been the entire time.
I am searching TFT in the iOS app.
You need the actual direct link. I think someone posted it on Reddit. Okay, I got you.
Okay. Yeah, TFT Mobile is like really big. I think like people vastly underestimate like how important games are to have, like in terms of their success with mobile. I think you have to. I mean, we can take a direct 1-to-1 based off Toast and I's history in Hearthstone, which like a big portion of the revenue, if not the majority of it, comes from mobile. Another game to look at is PUBG. PUBG Mobile is like secretly one of like the biggest games in the world, but like nobody really knows it, and it's largely because it is incredibly popular in like Latin America in particular. I think Brazil is like huge into it, as well as parts of Asia. And also on that note, like you take a look at a lot of franchises that are making mobile ports. Fortnite Mobile obviously was a very big part of their success. Call of Duty Mobile also was secretly like another really big multiplayer experience that's happening right now on mobile. So if this TFT Mobile launch goes really well, it could be like a lot better and more effective for even a lot of the streamers and content creators. More than just like, well, fix this composition or like give us this like feature of the game. TFT Mobile, like growing the player base, is one of the best things that can happen.
So I was just gonna say, I mean, sorry to cut you off. I wasn't sure if this was public yet because they sent me some information in our embargo, but it looks like it lifted yesterday. They have, and I don't know how much this has gotten spread around, but 80 million people have played it on PC since launch, which is insane for PC.
Oh, wow.
So whenever it comes to mobile, like I feel like it's just gonna go insane. I don't know how many people are playing it in the West right now. At least in the US, it definitely feels like it's died down a little bit since when it first came out. And we'll see if Galaxies picks it up. But I mean, mobile has a chance to just make it go bonkers. So I'm super interested to see what it does. And as for my experiences with it, I can say it feels. It's going to sound like I'm saying this as an insult. I don't mean it to be, because like gamers consider this to be such an insult, but like it feels like a mobile game. Like they have definitely made like all the UI, everything feels so like touch centric, so good. I was tweeting a little bit about some of my opinions on it. I don't like that Carousel still feels like you have to kind of like tap around. Like I have played TFT on a plane before, and just had to rely on my touchpad on the laptop, and it doesn't feel good to do Carousel that way. And I feel as though that's kind of what it feels like doing Carousel on the mobile app, where you're just like tapping and trying to get them, and it's kind of a smaller screen, so you're just kind of hoping you hit the right unit as it's moving. So I was hoping they would come up with like a better solve. Even just like I can't even move or pilot it around just by kind of joysticking it. There's no like joystick option that I've been able to find. Maybe I'm wrong on it, but I'd love to see them implement something like that. But other than that, a lot of the UI and everything is very clean, very good. I don't know. I really like it, and I feel like I'll play it on the phone. I don't think it's available yet on tablet, and I think that's where it's going to really shine. I'd rather play it on tablet, especially because like the games are so long that it's kind of hard to do on your phone for a long time. But I'm definitely going to keep it installed on my phone and use it in the same way that I had Hearthstone on my phone for a long time. And from what I can tell, it doesn't take up the giant storage space that Hearthstone had whenever I had it on my phone.
Yeah, we'll see how it gets developed. I think that mobile's like super important, especially in Asia, given that like mobile gaming's like the primary way that you like want to develop in those markets. Like China, for example, is like so big into mobile. It's absurd if you look at some of their other stats. And League of Legends is big in China. Like Riot in general is big in China. A Chinese player just won the Invitational, which is like a really big deal because everyone knows how prideful the Chinese are of their own people and their own players. So it's hopefully it's like a really good sign of things to come. I think that 80 million figure is like pretty staggering. I didn't even realize it's that big, but that's awesome to hear. And I think that mobile's going to be.
Toast, you stream the game. You stream these games so much. Does mobile mean anything for you? Like, would you ever actually touch it?
Well, it's kind of like a work thing, not necessarily a mobile thing, but I don't generally play games that I stream when I'm not streaming.
Gotcha.
But yeah,
you don't generally have the game.
Me too. I don't stream, so I can't technically do that, but it's true. I play games off stream all the time that I don't stream.
Yeah. But yeah, from a mobile thing, it's just so weird to play it on mobile. Like everything is the same technically. Like I can do all the things I can do, but it's such a different feeling to like have to tap, and also the shop. I don't like when it comes to like these games, auto battlers, like clicking that button to make the shop come down and then clicking it to go away, because it's just an extra 2 seconds I could be doing, like think about my rerolls and like just shuffling through and having to like pull it up and down. Like it's a necessity because there's only so much space on the phone, but I'm one of those people who just prefers the best possible UI, and I'm not on my phone a lot when I'm outside, where I'm traveling and like I need to play TFT because I've played so much TFT. It's like, oh, okay, I'll just wait till I'm streaming again to get my TFT fix. So
it's such an awkward time because people are quarantining themselves or social distancing, and rightfully so. During that time, it's like you're at home with your PC and your full setup, so you don't really need mobile. Although it's for people who primarily don't have like powerful like setups to play TFT. But that's kind of like always been a nice thing about Riot's games, is that you've never really had to have good hardware to pull it off compared to some other AAA titles. So overall, like it's really cool to see that it's made it to phones. Maybe there's like an actual reason to like buy those giant Samsung Notes for now, like because it's like huge screens that you can actually finally make use of. But yeah, for the most part, like if you play like on a small phone, I imagine TFT is like kind of a nightmare when it comes to positioning battles and stuff.
Yeah, no, it's your comments on us all being at home now and this game hitting mobile. It is pretty funny. I was thinking about that as it was coming out. I guess you can play on the couch now. Nobody wants to sit at their desk all day, right? That's not.
Yeah.
Some of us like to lay in bed in a very lazy fashion. So, well, either way, so it's quite exciting that it's hitting mobile. I'm excited for the TFT team. I think it's going to be really cool. But maybe we can just move on to our final topic. I know we're running a little bit over time, but we also started a little late, so I think it's okay. And that is TFT esports and the Invitational. Frodan, you were, well, I mean, both of you guys were at the Invitational, so I'll let you guys lead the discussion. But Frodan, if you want to kind of kick us off on your take on the Invitational, what you saw being part of it and all that.
Yep. So for those of you who missed it, a few days ago, Toast and I were casting the TFT Galaxies showcase. It's an invitational of 16 players, and I think that it just had like regional representation. So obviously, like we would love to see the top players. We'd love to see like Milk and Soju and Kurum and Mismatch Socks and Grand Vice and all these like really, really good players, Ace Spades, etc. But the reality is, like, you know, it's a marketing vehicle, and we're trying to like get people to play and get their audiences. And I understand there's like kind of some controversy around that because it's like, shouldn't you reward the loyal people? But in the end, you know, they do their own research and they run the numbers. So when that's not really us, the casters, to decide. And I think that's like in the end, I think they're happy with how it landed. That being said, my heart does go out for all the people who do grind TFT. And I'm sure we'll talk about the esports. Hopefully that grind pays off. In terms of the showcase, though, they had 2 days of competition. Day 1 was like groups, and day 2 was the top 8. And we saw the players who overall played like very consistently and well do very well. And Lilo, who won the competition, I thought he played the best out of the Chinese players for sure, because there was a couple of very questionable plays from some of the Chinese players. But Lilo in particular, I think, did really well. And also shout out to Becca. I think she like really did well on the first day, and unfortunately day 2 didn't go her way. But I also thought that she played phenomenally on the first day of competition.
Toast, what was your take on the Invitational before I open it up to kind of a broader conversation?
I enjoyed it. Definitely some disparity in skill, but you know, it's nice to see like. It's always nice to see like when it comes to these RNG games that the best players consistently win, and because I feel like TFT just kind of like Hearthstone always gets dismissed. It's like lol RNG in esports game, what a joke kind of deal. But you know, we see Lilo completely just be always consistent and like finishing off the tournament with a solid win against Dog. I felt like Dog, if he made some different decision, could have had a better chance. But at the same time, it's like also hard for him to just jump back into a brand new set, and he has to split his time. So Riot's decision to make it more of a marketing thing, I think, makes a lot of sense, because Dog gets 10,000 viewers playing Hearthstone Battlegrounds. It's like there's always time, I guess, to make things better for the loyal fan base, because at a selfish level, they're going to be there, right? And the opportunity to get new fans are a bit rare. So you can understand what Riot did. But obviously, it kind of sucks that nothing ever happened for set 2 for competitive. And they said they're announcing something in April. And let's hope it's a solid plan, because I want to see competitive TFT. Like,
yes.
I look at the challenger lobbies and the stuff they do. It's like every play feels so big, like desperation moves, like comes down to the last decision, and like so much scouting, like so much big brain stuff that you don't get in casual lobbies.
People like really like to compare a lot of strategy games, particularly like strategy esport games, to chess. And like I always felt like they were a little bit off the mark because they have to stretch the analogy. But like I know that it originated from autochess, but even then, I really feel like TFT is hitting a good spot where clearly it is the number 1 auto battler in terms of like its competitive depth, and it actually does scratch that like I don't think anyone can truly master TFT because of just like how insanely hard it is to do all these calculations and probability. And there's like a good balance of like there's a lot of tiny micro tricks that you can do, and as well as like you can get lost in the micro and like lose focus on your macro. So in terms of like what TFT has to offer for a try-hard competitive player that wants to fully immerse themselves, want to have that payoff because you have that galaxy brain, it's there for you. That being said, I think the communication of it on the broadcast is not that great because one, free-for-all battle royale games are very hard to just like broadcast in general. It's like a genre that the entire industry is struggling with despite its popularity. And the second thing is that there's not even a spectator mode in a lot of these features. So if we did rush the competitive scene, it wouldn't necessarily feel like right, so to speak. So I think that before we start thinking about like what does competition really look like, I think we have to like have those proper tools to communicate a good story.
Well, what's funny is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say the one last thing is that Toast played in a competition that I ran, which is the Twitch Rivals at TwitchCon. Which
wait, I also played in that competition, Frodan.
Yes, and Travis also played. Where did you finish, Travis?
I made it out of the first round, and then Striving Light, who's in the Twitch chat right now and is helping to run this whole thing, knocked me out, and I didn't make it to the final section. But
gotcha. So we'll ban Striving Light in a minute here. But,
yes, thank you.
The TwitchCon Twitch Rivals event for TFT is to be considered like probably the only, or at least the biggest, open competition. And like in terms of like competitive integrity, like people who did well in that really take a lot of pride in it. And Toast played in it, and unfortunately, I think the spectating experience was pretty poor. And I have like a lot of thoughts on as to reasons why, but in the end, it boils down to one essence: is that TFT is not a broadcast ready product at the moment for an esports thing. However, if you incorporate things like listening to their streams and listen to their banter, if you incorporate like the fact that some of these people like Toast are mega popular streamers and personalities, then you start to drive interest. Can we find a way to formulate interest around people who aren't known, but they're like super good at the game and competitive? And I think that's like a big question to answer moving forward. And I think that largely has to do with what kind of story tools and narratives we can drive from it.
Well, and we can say that, or I don't know if we can say, but I'm going to say it anyway. We were initially at one iteration of the show, and up until a couple of days ago, we wanted to have gameplay be the second part of the show. And because there was no spectator tool, we went around a bunch on like, should I broadcast my perspective? And I was against that because my perspective would have been humiliating. Should we have Toast do it? And clearly that would have been a bad idea because he barely made it here at all. And so Frodan was having some tech issues because he doesn't have an Alienware PC. So there were a lot of reasons why we couldn't make it happen. And if there was just a spectator tool, like our producer could have hopped in, just watch the game. So it is kind of disappointing that we don't have that yet. I totally understand that this game was built out of shoestrings and bubblegum over the course of a couple months. But it's unfortunate because I feel for the folks who, and I know Soju, I was reading this recently about his sort of rant that he went on a couple weeks ago about the Invitational and the lack of anything in set 2. He pointed out, as Frodan just did, that there was nothing happening after TwitchCon last year, which was quite some time ago. And so I really do hope that this stuff starts to hit because while it's great to have mobile and that's going to do tons for the player base and all that, I think if you don't want to have people move on or get distracted or lose interest in it, I'm happy we're finally able to do the show, but I was ready last year to do a show about TFT and I felt like the competitive community just kind of moved on or got distracted because there was just not as much going on. So hopefully that happens soon. I kind of want to throw to Toast and maybe Frodan right after, but I think the other thing that the Soju rant highlighted and the Invitational highlighted is much like Hearthstone, which I followed from afar, there's this kind of schism between the personalities and the streamers and the people who are just grinding it out and wanting to be the best of the best. And it's like, how do you approach that from a viewership and an event standpoint? I'm kind of curious, given your guys' experience in Hearthstone, what would you like to see TFT esports and competitive and entertainment products look like?
Frodan probably has a better perspective when it comes to competitive players because I know Frodan has always tried to lead the charge on getting these competitive Hearthstone players to stop being so fucking boring all the time and like make an effort.
So that's what it is. It's just the competitors are too boring.
It's like it's tough because like the best streamers are the one that's entertaining and good. And yeah, you have players like, I guess like so much people watch Faker, right? And if you watch his stream, he's pretty quiet and he's not animated like a Tyler One or a Night Blue. But so much people watch it because like he's the best of the best. But if you're like just a challenger player and you're expecting viewership because of that, and like you're not being entertaining, then you're never gonna get viewership. And like being upset at like lesser skilled players, streamers, or just more entertaining at you is like, it's not the reason why you don't have viewers, you know, like being mad at like, oh, he's only diamonds, but you know, I deserve these viewers. And it was a problem. It was like a sentiment sometimes in the Hearthstone community. But like when you look at world champions, when it comes to Hearthstone, like there's this guy called Osaka and a guy called Pavo, and no one watches the stream because they didn't really capitalize on their success. But then you look at someone like Firebad, who tried to stream more to try and like be more of a personality, and something he had to work on for a long time, and now he's like one of the top streamers for Hearthstone.
Sorry.
No,
I was just gonna say, I mean, isn't the counter argument Faker, right? Like, there's a system in place for League of Legends, at least, where the top competitors don't need to be the most captivating individuals in content. And you know, Faker, who's commonly, you know, he's gotten better about it over time, but he was wildly popular even when people used to kind of joke that he was a bit of a robot. You know, that's a system where at least his high level competitiveness has been highlighted and it's supported him. You know, why is it that a game like Hearthstone or a game like TFT can't support those types of players in the same way? Is it just a product of what the game looks like and feels like?
I think the random factor changes it a lot, because like even the top TFT player, they're gonna take a lot of like third places, fourth places, and to them, third place is a win. Like fourth place is a win. It's a LP gain, right? But to like the casual audience, like fourth place, you fucked up here, you screwed up here, you didn't do this correctly. A lot of backseat gaming going on. So it's hard to have that like, whoa, street cred. Like when you see Shroud, when it comes to FPS, just delete an entire team by himself. It's like you feel so impressed. But when it comes
you
to
in Valorant
games,
soon, I believe.
Yeah, Valorant soon as well.
Exactly.
Like if you're good at that, like you can just display how good you are. Like you just let your gameplay do the talking. But when it comes to strategy games, it's much harder to do that because there's so much randomness, and the gameplay itself, it's hard to be excited about. So as a streamer, you have to bring the hype. You know, you have to be like, oh yeah, my Echo's in the back, he's whack, he's about to ult. But not everyone's like that. Like competitive players, they can just watch it. You know, try to see what's going on. It's like, okay, I gotta change this. I gotta change that. All right, I'm gonna put this item on that. Okay, and then he watches the next fight, and it's kind of boring. But best case scenario, if you're a challenger player, you have the technical skills. All you have to work on is being entertaining.
Yeah, I would say that at its core, if we were to like simplify everything down to its most core essence, is that people want to hear a good story. And so when you look at sports, you look at esports. If you look at why people like watching Toast, it's because they have like stories to tell that are really fun. And the story behind a gamer like Shroud is that he's really good at aiming, and you are really impressed. So the story kind of speaks for itself. And the same thing with Faker. It's like this guy doesn't ever lose mid lane whenever he's there, or like this guy is just like the best player in League of Legends. However, the story actually kind of ends at Faker. Like if you look, I don't really think the number 2 through 10 Korean streamers are getting anywhere near the amount of attention that Faker does in Twitch, for example. So I think like for one, to debunk the why isn't it like but Faker's okay, it's like every scene has like one of those. You're like, for us in Hearthstone, it was Kalento. Kalento became a popular streamer, having like almost no like element of being engaging and charismatic, and he's kind of developed more over time. But like, you know, every scene can have one of those, but there's not room for all of them. So if you're like number 20 to the party of being like a challenger level player, what's your niche then? So I think that's something to ask for, like, what's your story? The second thing is that, kind of like what Toast was saying, is that like strategy games make good for streaming because you have to communicate to your audience, and most of the difficulty in strategy games is all in your mind. It's not in your execution. So if you're not talking about it, you're not providing commentary, you're not like, you know, showing off like what's happening inside your brain. You're just keeping it all in there and just like making plays. then what's the story that people gravitate toward? They just see it and then they have to interpret it, and it's almost like we're in a museum looking at a painting and like, what does this mean to you? And that a lot of people, they're not into that. They want to go in for like a relaxing time. And so that's why I think like even for strategy games, maybe to toot our own horns for Toast and myself, and hopefully you, Travis, is that I feel like the commentators and casters and like people who provide that narrative in terms of the audio form is really, really important. Maybe even more important than games that naturally kind of speak for themselves with the action-driven pace. So I feel like that TFT really has to do a good job with that, and that's kind of what I'm bringing it back to what we're saying. The personality of players, it's there. Trust me. Like I watch their streams. Those are some salty motherfuckers, and they like really like have a lot to say, and they're very charming. I love watching Krim stream because I like seeing his chat troll him. I like seeing all the times that he queues up and there's like all these like alt accounts saying, now we win trade for Kurum, and they all like type in chat. It's like a little fun community, little pocket challenger meta there. It's super fun. There's a lot of personality to be tapped into, but like they have to, one, market that, and two, like we have to be able to convey that on a broadcast.
Yeah.
And I think that's like really challenging to do it currently with the tools that we're getting.
I know some people in the chat are saying Frodan's mic is getting a little staticky. I'm hearing a little bit too. I think it's just the cable bumping a little bit.
Sorry, I was talking about audio, and my audio sucks.
I know. You have to have a story you can tell, and if it's just all static, then nobody's going to listen to you. I think is what Frodan's trying to get. He's demonstrating it right now. It's a very artistic decision in his rant. Either way, by the way, everyone, the first episode, we're working out some technical kinks. Hopefully, should have it in a better place in the coming episodes. But either way, I'm excited for TFT Esports. I hope it shows up, because right now it doesn't feel like it's here necessarily. Everything from spectator missing to a lack of events. Obviously, the Invitational was fun, and I'm happy that they did another one of those. But hopefully, we see some stuff for other people. Either way, that's the end of our show. We can go through and just do some shout outs here at the end if you guys have anything you want to plug. Frodan, I'll start with you.
I want to thank Toast, our guest, for stopping by. And I know he's really busy, and I appreciate that he's able to take the time to do that. I also want to shout out Giant Slayer for like kind of taking a leap of faith on Travis and myself. We've never really worked on projects like this before, so hopefully we can do them proud. And the last thing I want to say is something that I was talking about earlier, which is that we're going through a lot right now as like society, not just as gamers, but as human species. COVID-19 health scares right now, it's very real, and I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I really want people to go out and like research and do their reading, but also just to do their part. Like this is so much bigger than just like what affects us personally. It's about the people around us and people that they love, and constantly goes full circle right back to us as individuals. So please, by all means, like read up on stuff, research, support others who are also doing the same, and most importantly, keep yourself safe. Wash your hands, distance yourself when you can, and only do things as necessary. We're all in it together.
Yeah. Toast, how about you? You got anything you want to shout out? Where can people find you?
Twitter.com/disguystoast, fb.gg/disguystoast, and just thank you for Giant Slayer for initiatives like this. I know it's like a bit smaller, but communities.
What are you talking about? This show is crushing every other show out there right now. Hotline League is maybe the only one that's bigger. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Yeah, but like shows like this, they're very grassroots, and it does create that sense of community. That's really important because, the big streamers, the big strategy gamers, they'll come and go. It's like, oh, what's the flavor of the month this time? What's going to get me the most viewership? But groups like this, content like this, where it's always relied on, is very important for like the really hardcore audience, and even the casual one who just plays on their phone and wants to listen to people talk about TFT. Something reliable. So yeah, thanks for Giant Slayer for hosting it.
Yeah. Well, I was going to discuss this as somewhat taking away some of my stuff, but I was just talking about about TFT Esports. Be sure if you are watching this live to follow the Twitch channel you're watching it on YouTube, go subscribe and then come back here and follow this channel, because I know they've got plans and you can follow along for some of their TFT events and tournaments and competitions that are happening. They're trying to come in and help make stuff like that happen. So it's going to be quite cool. And their Twitter is displayed on the stream right now. You can go follow them. They've got a Discord as well that's linked underneath the Twitch thing. Hopefully it's there. Their Twitter, a little quiet right now. Maybe I shouldn't flame my employer. They're not my employer, but the people who are having me do the show. There's not even a picture there right now. So hopefully we'll get a picture there soon. It's all a work in progress. Frodan and I forced their hand to start the show before perhaps they were entirely ready, because we wanted to make sure that we were here for set 3. But a bunch of really wonderful, passionate people I've been working with recently, and so happy to be doing this for them. So please follow here. Hopefully you can catch our future episodes as well. I know there's going to also be a podcast version. I'm sure you can tweet at them to get info on all that as it develops. But thanks so much, Toast, for coming on. Thanks, Frodan, for doing this. Can't wait to play more set 3 hitting today. And hopefully we see you next time here on Teamfight Talkshow.